Let me tell you something about trust. About what it actually costs when the person who is supposed to know you best decides, in one conversation, that they don't. My name is Adrian. I am 36 years old. I have been building a business with my husband Elijah for 8 years. A catering company that started in our kitchen with a $500 investment and my grandmother's recipes and grew into something that feeds weddings and corporate events and church banquets and has 12 employees who count on us to keep the lights on. I ran the books. I handled the accounts, the invoices, the vendor payments, the payroll. I did this because I was good at it. I have a degree in accounting, for God's sake, and because Elijah was the face of the kitchen, the creative mind, the person who made food taste like memory. We were a team. Or I believed we were. On a Tuesday evening in September, Elijah came home with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger exactly, something colder than anger. Removed. The face of a man who has been told something and has decided it is true before he came through the door. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. Darnell says you've been taking money from the business account, he said. Darnell, his younger brother, who had been working as our delivery driver for 2 years. I looked at my husband's face. I looked for the man who had watched me build his company's financial infrastructure from a spreadsheet on a folding table in our first apartment. The man who had told me, for years into the business, that he couldn't run this without me. What? I said. He says he saw transfers. Money going to an account that isn't in the business name. Elijah, I said. Those transfers go to my personal account because I take a salary. Which you approved. Which is documented. Which has been the arrangement for 4 years. He says it's more than that. I looked at him. And you believe him? He didn't answer immediately. And in that pause, that 4-second, terrible pause, I understood that something had already been decided. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to tell you about Darnell, because understanding Darnell is understanding everything. Darnell Marcus Webb was 32 years old, 4 years younger than Elijah, and had spent most of those 32 years being the person that things happened to rather than the person who made things happen. He had dropped out of 2 community college programs. He had lost 3 jobs in the 2 years before Elijah hired him. He owed money to people he did not discuss and borrowed money from people he promised to repay and never did. Elijah loved his brother the way firstborn sons sometimes love siblings who struggled, with a specific guilt that masquerades as devotion. He had given Darnell the delivery job because Darnell needed it, not because Darnell earned it. He had given Darnell 2 raises because Darnell asked for them, not because Darnell merited them. He had lent Darnell money on 4 separate occasions, 2 of which I knew about when they happened and 2 of which I discovered later in the business records, logged as miscellaneous expenses. I had said nothing about the money. I had maintained the books honestly and noted what I found and said nothing beyond what was necessary, because Elijah's relationship with his brother was a door I had always understood I should knock on rather than open. That restraint cost me more than I can calculate. What I did not know, what I had no reason to know, was that Darnell had been accessing the business's petty cash fund. Not dramatically. Carefully. 20s and 50s from the lockbox in the office, on days when he made the supply run and had a reason to be in the office alone. I would discover later that over 18 months, he had taken $11,300. What I also did not know was that Darnell, realizing the books were tight enough that someone with an accounting background would eventually find the discrepancy, had decided to get there first. To build a story before the numbers told theirs. He had gone to Elijah, my husband, his brother, and he had told him that I was the one stealing. He had sat across from Elijah, this man who owed me nothing but knew I owed him everything if his lie held, and built a case out of words. And Elijah had listened. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because trust me, there's a lot more story to be told. Without wasting much time, let's continue. Elijah did not ask me to leave that first Tuesday. What he did was worse, he went quiet. The specific quiet of a man who has received information and is sitting with it in a way that excludes you. He slept on his side of the bed, but with a distance between us that felt physical even when it wasn't. For 3 days he was quiet. I went to work. I processed payroll. I paid the linen vendor and confirmed the flowers for a Saturday wedding and answered 23 emails and pretended that my marriage was not quietly coming apart. On Friday evening he said, "I need you to stop having access to the business accounts until this gets sorted out." I put down the fork I was holding. "You're removing me from the accounts," I said. "Temporarily." Based on what Darnell said. Based on what Darnell said and some things I've been looking at myself. What things, Elijah? Show me what you've been looking at. I will sit here and explain every transaction, every transfer, every entry in those books, because I built those books and I know every dollar in them. I need some space to think, he said. That sentence. I need some space to think. After 8 years of building something together, after 12 employees, after my grandmother's recipes feeding people's most important days, I need some space to think. I stood up from the table. "If you remove me from those accounts," I said, "and you do it on the word of a man who has borrowed money he never repaid and lost 3 jobs before you gave him this one, you are not thinking. You are choosing Adrian. And if you choose him over 8 years of me building your company while he was driving your van," I stopped. Breathed. "Then I won't stay here and wait to see what else he says about me." I went upstairs. I packed a bag, not dramatically, not everything, just the things I needed for a week. My laptop with the accounting software. My external hard drive with every backup of every financial record the business had ever generated. My toiletries. For changes of clothes. I called my sister Monique from the car. "I need a place to stay," I said. "You don't even have to explain," she said. "Come." Monique Adrian Jackson was 39, 3 years older than me, a high school vice principal who ran her household the way she ran her school, with clear expectations, zero tolerance for nonsense, and a specific love that expressed itself as unwavering logistical support. She had always thought Elijah was a good man. She had said this to me at my wedding and on multiple occasions since, and I believe she meant it. But she had never fully trusted the Webb family dynamic, had watched Elijah's deference to Darnell with a quiet, specific attention that she had never turned into words because she respected my marriage. She did not say "I told you so" when I arrived at her door at 9:47 on a Friday night with a bag and a laptop and the careful composure of a woman who is saving her falling apart for after she has somewhere safe to fall. She said, "I made up the guest room. Come eat something." I ate. She did not ask questions. After dinner we sat at her kitchen table, she with a cup of tea, me with the external hard drive open on my laptop, and I walked her through the books. "Here," I said. "Every salary payment I've drawn, every month for 4 years. Documented, approved, consistent. Here are the transfer records. Here is the email where Elijah signed off on the salary structure in year 2. Here is the response from his own email account." Monique put on her reading glasses and looked at each document carefully. "There's nothing here," she said. "I know. He has to know that. He doesn't want to look," I said. Or he looked and didn't see what Darnell needed him to see, and Darnell was persuasive enough to make him doubt anyway. Monique took off her reading glasses and looked at me. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to find what Darnell actually did," I said. "Because the books are tight enough that someone took something. It wasn't me." "Which means?" "It was him," Monique said. "It was him," I said. "And I'm going to find every dollar he touched." I opened the accounting software. I started at the beginning. Here is what I found, and I want to be precise because precision is how this story gets told correctly. The petty cash fund was the first thread. We maintained a $500 lockbox for small supply purchases, the kind of thing where writing a check was impractical and a card was inconvenient. It was replenished monthly from the operating account with a transfer I coded as petty cash replenishment. Looking at those replenishments over the previous 18 months, I noticed the pattern immediately. Not the amounts, those were relatively consistent. But the frequency. In the 18 months before Darnell joined us, the fund had been replenished 9 times. In the 18 months since, it had been replenished 23 times. More than double the frequency. For a fund whose purpose and volume had not changed. I pulled the supply receipts that corresponded to each replenishment. In our filing system, which I maintained meticulously, Every petty cash expenditure was supposed to be accompanied by a receipt stapled to a coded form. Going through the 18 months of Darnell's employment, I found 31 replenishments with corresponding receipts and 0 gaps, and then 4 replenishments where the receipts were missing. The forms were present, but in different handwriting than the forms around them. And the amounts were rounded in a way that supply purchases never are. $120, $240, $80, $160. Totaling $600 in those 4 visible gaps. But that was only what I could see in the receipts. The actual shortfall, when I ran the full cash reconciliation, a process I had done quarterly, and which showed me every dollar in versus every dollar out, was $11,300. $11,000. Over 18 months. In amounts small enough to blend into the ordinary noise of a catering company's petty cash. I sat with that number until 3 in the morning. Then I called Monique into the guest room, showed her the reconciliation, and watched her face go from skeptical to furious in about 4 seconds. "He stole $11,000, she said. "And then told Elijah I was stealing to cover it," I said. "And Elijah believed him," she said. "Yes," I said. Neither of us said anything for a long time. I did not go back to Elijah with the numbers. Not yet. I knew what would happen if I did. Darnell would deny it. Elijah would be caught between his brother and his wife again, and without a professional analysis, the reconciliation I had run myself could be dismissed as my own self-serving account. I needed someone else's name on the numbers. I called a forensic accountant named Gerald Okafor, a referral from Monique's attorney husband, Raymond, who had said the name with the specific confidence of a man who had seen Gerald's work hold up in court. Gerald was 48, precise, with the professional economy of a man who spoke in conclusions rather than processes. He met me at Monique's kitchen table with a portable hard drive and a legal pad and spent 2 hours going through everything I had provided. He did not speak while he worked. He made notes on the legal pad in a small, dense handwriting I could not read from where I sat. Monique had left us alone, which was the right instinct. When he finished, he set his pen down and looked at me. "The shortfall is $11,340, he said. "Your personal withdrawals are consistent, documented, and approved. The discrepancy is concentrated in petty cash fund depletion and specifically correlates, in timing, with the access pattern of whoever was executing the supply runs." "The supply runs were done by one person," I said. "Then that's your answer," Gerald said. "I can produce a formal report that will withstand audit. I can also note, in that report, that the salary arrangements for the account manager," he looked at me, "that's you, I assume, are fully transparent and bear no relationship to the missing funds." "How long for the report?" I said. "A week," he said. "I'll take it," I said. Raymond had told me Gerald's rate. I paid it from my personal savings, the account Darnell had told Elijah I was stealing to fill. The irony was not lost on me. I paid a forensic accountant to prove my innocence with money my husband's brother had tried to make him believe I'd stolen. The report arrived in 6 days. I read it once. Then I called Elijah. He answered on the second ring, which told me he had not stopped thinking about it either. "I need you to come to Monique's," I said. "There's something you need to see." "Adrian." "Elijah. I have a forensic accountant's report. An independent, professional, court-ready analysis of the business accounts for the past 18 months. I paid for it myself. It took 6 days. And I need you to come and read it." A pause. "Is Darnell?" "No," I said. "This conversation is between you and me. After you read the report, you can do whatever you want with what it says. But right now I am asking you, as your wife, to come and read a document." He came. It took him 20 minutes to drive across town, and he arrived at Monique's door in a gray crew neck and the expression of a man who has been carrying something heavy and is not sure whether what he's about to receive will make it heavier or lighter. Monique let him in and then disappeared into her bedroom with the specific tact of a woman who knows exactly when to be absent. I sat across from Elijah at the kitchen table. I set Gerald's report in the center of the table, 12 pages, bound with a clear cover, Gerald's name and credentials on the front page. "Read it," I said. He read it. All 12 pages. I watched his face the way I had watched it across this same table on our first apartment, the way you watch a face you know well when it is doing something difficult. He read slowly. He turned pages carefully. By page 7 his jaw had tightened. By page 10 the color had shifted in his face, not pale, but something drawn and internal. He set the last page down. He did not speak for a long time. "It was Darnell," he said finally. Not a question. "It was Darnell," I said. 11,000. $11,340, I said. Over 18 months. While he was running supply pickups. He had access to the lockbox. Elijah pressed both hands flat on the table. His jaw was working. His eyes were wet at the edges. "And he told me it was you," he said. "Yes," I said. And I believed him. "Yes," I said. "You did." Elijah called Darnell the next morning. I know the details of that conversation because Elijah told me afterward, in the specific recounting of a man who needed to account for what he had done and witness simultaneously. He called from the business, not from home, not from his personal phone, but from the business line, which meant he had gone to the office first. Which meant he had looked at the lockbox. Had counted it perhaps. Had walked through the office with Gerald's report in his hand and looked at his brother's workspace. Darnell answered casually, the way a person answers when they believe the story they have told has held. Elijah said later there was a moment at the beginning of the call where Darnell's voice was completely normal, warm even, the voice of a younger brother calling with his older brother's name on the screen. Elijah said, "I need you to come to the office. Today." Darnell said, "Everything okay?" Elijah said, "Come to the office." When Darnell arrived, Elijah had Gerald's report on the desk. He had printed 2 copies. He set one in front of Darnell and kept one for himself. He said, "Read it." What happened next, the part Elijah told me about in fragments, because it was the part that cost him the most to describe, was that Darnell did not deny it immediately. He read the report, or pretended to read it, and then he looked up at Elijah and his face did something complicated that Elijah described as the face of a person deciding which version of themselves to be. He chose the wrong one. He said, "Those numbers could have been manipulated by—" "Stop," Elijah said. "Eli, listen to me. $11,000, Darnell. Out of the lockbox. While you were doing supply runs. Gerald Okafor, Google him. He testifies in federal court, signed his name to this." Darnell's face changed again. The deciding was over. What was left was something smaller and truer. "I needed the money," he said. "I was going to pay it back." "And Adrian?" Elijah said. "You told me Adrian was stealing." Darnell looked at the desk. "I panicked," he said. Elijah terminated him on the spot. Then he sat alone in the office for an hour before he called me. I want to be honest about what happened after, because I think the honest version of this story is more useful than the version where everything resolves cleanly. Elijah and I tried. I want to say that first and mean it, we genuinely tried. He apologized. Not once, multiple times, in multiple conversations, with the specific thoroughness of a man who understood the full weight of what he had done. He said the right things. He meant the right things. But something had happened to the architecture of our marriage that the right words could not fully reconstruct. I had spent 8 years building a company that bore his name. I had given it my grandmother's recipes and my accounting degree and 12-hour days and the specific care of a woman who treats someone else's dream with the same tenderness she'd treat her own. And when his brother sat across from him and built a lie, Elijah had believed it. Had removed me from the accounts. Had let me pack a bag and leave without once asking to sit down with the books together before he acted. That is the part that would not heal. Not the accusation itself, I understood, in some analytical part of my brain, how Darnell had constructed it and why it had been persuasive. What would not heal was the 4-second pause. The space to think. The removal from accounts before he looked at a single number. We went to counseling, a warm-voiced woman named Dr. Simone who was good at her work and said true things. We sat in her office every Tuesday for 5 months, and we were honest with each other in ways we had not been before the crisis, which was the specific dark gift of what happened. But I stopped being able to sit across from Elijah in business meetings without hearing his silence from that September evening. And he could see me hearing it. And neither of us could unknow what we now knew about what happened when he was forced to choose. We separated 14 months after I came home. The business continued. I stayed on as CFO with a formal contract this time, my name on documents, my authority explicit and written, nothing that existed only on the foundation of a husband's word. We were better business partners after the marriage ended than we had been incited, which is its own kind of truth. Darnell repaid $9,000 of the $11,000 over 2 years. Elijah's mother, a proud, grief-stricken woman named Patricia who had built her identity around her son's relationship, never fully recovered from learning what Darnell had done. She stopped hosting Sunday dinners. She stopped calling the brothers on the same call. The family table that had fed everyone for 30 years went quiet. That is the whole family never recovering. Not dramatically. Quietly. Here is what I want you to take from this, because I did not go through it for it to only be a story of loss. The business is still running. We catered 214 events last year. We have 14 employees now, 2 more than when Darnell's lie nearly burned everything down. 3 of those employees are women I hired specifically because I recognized in their resumes the particular quality of someone who will build something carefully and not get enough credit for it. I know that quality because I lived it. My grandmother's recipes are still on every menu. Every wedding we cater, every corporate luncheon, every church banquet, her collard greens, her cornbread, her pound cake that makes grown people stop mid-conversation and ask what is in it. She has been gone for 11 years, but her hands are still in the food. That means something to me that I do not have words large enough for. My formal CFO contract is framed on the wall of my home office. Not because I need to look at it daily, I don't. But because it represents the specific lesson of this story, which is that trust is not the same as protection, and love is not the same as security, and the woman who builds the thing deserves to have her name on it. Monique still checks in every Sunday. Raymond helped me negotiate my contract. Gerald Okafor's report sits in a physical file in my office, behind my desk, the way you keep something that proved you were right when the person who should have known chose not to. Elijah and I are fine with each other. The word fine is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and we both know it, but it is the accurate word. We are professional and functional, and there is a residual warmth that a marriage of 8 years leaves even after it is over. He is a better person for what happened. So am I. People often become better in the wreckage of things that should have been handled differently. The moral of this story is not that men cannot be trusted or that brothers will always betray. The moral is simpler and harder than that. The moral is, when someone who loves you is given a reason to doubt you, what they do in the next 4 seconds tells you everything about the foundation you have been building on. I am Adrian. I kept the business. I kept my name on it. That is enough. Moral: the person who builds something with you deserves to be believed when it matters most, and what someone does in the moment of doubt reveals whether the foundation was ever as solid as it appeared. The end. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for watching. I hope it stayed with you and gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of the journey. There's so much more story still to come.